Hello there. According to my screen here, I have just gone live. Let's see, only 8 minutes late today. And the reason for that today was because I was having trouble signing on. Technical difficulties. Everything, if any of you have ever done a YouTube live knows you have to type in your stuff beforehand and do a few little settings. Make one little mistake. For some reason, it won't let me go back. Have to start all over from the beginning. And here I am already running late. And I'm like, no, come on, YouTube, give me a break. Hi, Ward. How are you? I'm okay, you say. Great to see it. Well, great to be with you, Ward. Yeah, I was in Palm Springs last weekend and it spilled over into Monday. And I just figured, well, okay, it's a holiday and I hope people will excuse me for taking a day off. I actually had a week off and away because Dr. Whimsy Anderson was also out of town. She was in Guatemala for the week, so I didn't do any of my live streams with her either. Love doing this, but sometimes we all need breaks. We all need to just get our head above water. What was that? Did I run into the Ricardos and Van Johnson? No, it was Rock Hudson. No, kidding, of course. But, Lucy is quite a fixture in Palm Springs. There's a lovely statue of her there. It's a statue of her sitting on a park bench, and it's in the main downtown area of Palm Springs. And of course, people love to sit on that bench and put their arm around Lucy and pose with her. And you also see a lot of Lucy artwork around town, murals and that sort of thing, because she and Desi lived there. They didn't live there, but they had a second home there, a vacation home. And even after their divorce, I believe both of them continued to spend time there. If I'm not mistaken, I think Lucy got custody of the house in the divorce settlement. I could be wrong on that. Renee, hi, thank you. Yes, I'm okay. I was just explaining I had needed a little break last week. It was Labor Day, and I was in Palm Springs. I was tired, and I was dehydrated. Any of you have ever spent time in the desert? It's not an easy environment to be in. For many reasons, but in this case, it was like, close to 100 degrees. And even in the wintertime, it's very, very dry there. So you have to constantly remind yourself to hydrate. Otherwise, you end up getting headachy and achy and moody and crabby. But I was with a couple of very, very dear friends of mine. Sure they wouldn't mind me saying their names, Stephanie and Tammy. I'm always very respectful of privacy. They're both therapists, gifted therapists, and they have a beautiful home they share together, and they share in a lot of their business endeavors. But I love Stephanie and Tammy, well, for many reasons, because Stephanie, I go back almost 30 years. We were talking about it. We wish we knew the date. We didn't know it was going to be so momentous when we met, so we can't remember the specific date. All we know, it was in April of 1996, so next year is 30 years. And then her sister moved out here a few years later following a personal incident, and they moved in together, and they've just been together ever since. And I've come to love both of them, frankly, as my own sisters. And what I love about them is that, well, we share in common the fact that we're very much into our art, into our writing. We love old Hollywood. We're also the same way. We constantly have projects in the works of our own. And many times I follow their lead. They're two of the most industrious people I've ever known, and I have the greatest respect for that. And one of the things I love about Stephanie, she taught me a long time ago, just keep kicking in doors. Just one door doesn't open, go to the next door. If that doesn't open, go to the next door. Eventually, a door is going to open up. She never gives up. And I have known that woman so long that she now has her doctorate. I was with her the day she said, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to college and further my education. And she got her college degree and then decided to go for her master's. And she didn't want to stop at her master's. She went on and got her doctorate. I love people like that. They're my favorite people in the world because I always hope some of that's going to rub off on me. Let's some other comments here. Ward, full disclosure, I won't be here next week. I'll be on a jaunt somewhere across the pond. Well, good for you. Either direction you're going. It's always exciting to go across the ocean. I mean, I've been to Europe 6 times in my life. I'm really aching to go back. I don't know when that's going to be, finances and so forth. But one of the things I'm doing tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact, I have an appointment at the post office to get my passport renewed. I decided I'm going to stop procrastinating about that and at least have my passport, because I think every one of us should have one. Won't comment further as far as politics and so forth goes, but I think we need to protect ourselves and have a passport. Or you never know when somebody's going to say, hey, you want to get on my private jet and fly to Paris for breakfast? I don't want it to be, oh shoot, I don't have my passport, darn the luck. Nothing like that. But yeah, I've love going to Europe. And as far as going the other direction, I've been to Hawaii 3 times. So 3,000 miles across the Pacific, and once you get across America, another 3,000 to Europe. But to me, it's always something special. Of course, I always, whenever I'm on a plane to Hawaii, I always think of that movie with Samuel L. Jackson, Snakes on a Plane. Remember that one? Where they're on a flight over the Pacific Ocean on, I think they're either going to Hawaii or coming back from Hawaii, when they discover the plane is full of all these venomous snakes. It was a movie. I said, there is no way I'm going to watch that movie. And I talked to my sister, and my sister said, oh God, no way would I watch that movie. Oh no. And then the next time I talked to my sister, she said, well, did you watch it? She said, I did too. We couldn't resist. Oh, Pam, hi. I just looked and saw you on there. Yes, I was going to text you. I found it the other day. For you people who don't know this, Pam knows, my dear friend Pam. I had an appointment last week to get my passport, get to the post office, have my photocopies of my driver's license. I have everything all filled out. And they go, well, sir, we do need your birth certificate. And I'm going, oh, of course, here. And I reach in the envelope. There was no birth certificate in there. I was freaking out. And okay, there's Sasha. I rushed home and thought it was in this drawer where I remembered putting it. It wasn't there. And I pulled out more drawers. It wasn't there. And I pulled out more drawers. And then I was dumping out drawers all over my floor and tearing my place apart. Could not find that birth certificate anywhere. I mean, like getting hysterical over it. And I distinctly remembered where I put it, and it wasn't there. But finally, yes, Pam, thank you for all your prayers for me. I did find the birth certificate, and I have an appointment tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm going to get this resolved. Ward, you think I might like Japan? Well, that's what Whimsy tells me. Dr. Whimsy Anderson, whom I work for and work with. She adores Japan, so much so she's seriously considering moving there permanently. She wants to get out of the country. But Whimsy is a lot more nomadic than I am. My zodiac sign is Cancer. Joyce, yes, you're there. You know that. I'm a Cancer. And us Cancers, we love our homes. Our homes are like our nests. We typically fill our homes up with too much crap and belongings and things, but we're very home oriented. So I love travel, but I never want to be away too long. I always like to get home. This is where I like to be stationed, but I'm yearning to travel again. Pam, you're picking apples while listening. Hey, that's so cool. You know, Pam, I love how I won't invade your privacy or anything, but I know how you love to name your apple trees and all. And yeah, where you are, your summers are shorter. So I'm glad you're just really, really savoring it while you have it. And Joyce, thank you for joining. I still need to give you a call, Joyce, because I had some news from a psychic I spoke to recently. Some things I think you would find interesting because it ties in with what you found on my chart. In fact, some charts going way back. So we'll talk soon. I see everybody saying hello to each other. Oh, Andy, your birthday is over now since of September 7th. Happy belated birthday, Andy. I'm sorry I wasn't around to wish you directly, but I hope you did something special for yourself because, a birthday, I'm very much about self-love. We should love ourselves. We should celebrate ourselves. And a birthday should be treated special. I know the cliche, another trip around the sun, but it's another year of life. And it's a chance to celebrate ourselves and also to celebrate what we have meant to others, what we have given to the world. So Andy, happy birthday. Maybe tell me what did you do for your birthday? Let's see. Let me scroll down here. Ward's asking, Miss Pomona, did you save the apples for applesauce or apple butter? Sasha can't decide if she wants to be on the show or not. Okay, she's deciding now she doesn't. Make up your mind. But my mother used to make applesauce. We were very lucky. We had a big 2-acre backyard. We had all these trees, and a lot of those were apples. So come summertime, we didn't even have to pick the apples. A lot of them would just fall down onto the ground. But one of my jobs as a kid was to get those bushel baskets and collect apples and bring them in, where my mother would have this whole operation like an assembly line set up in the kitchen, with the grinder and everything. And she'd have big pots on the stove with applesauce cooking. And all of this was so she could put it in containers and then put it in the deep freeze for the rest of the year. And also my father, I think it's because he grew up on a farm, West Virginia. And, you could never take the farm boy out of the boy. And so he had his own big garden. And I think it was a nice hobby for him. It was very restful for him. So we always had corn on the cob and beans and tomatoes. And I'm trying to remember what else we had. Oh, potatoes, of course. But, any of you know this, fresh vegetables are just divine. So we would have those throughout the summer. But my mother also did a lot of canning. And I remember, didn't especially enjoy doing this, snapping beans. I'm sure you've done that sometime in your life or another, but it felt like summers were just endless, snapping those damn beans while watching television. And we didn't have central air conditioning. We didn't have air conditioning, period, in our house. We had it in our bedrooms, and that was it. So I remember, and this was in Virginia. It was hot. It was humid. It was muggy. So I have this memory of all these electric fans blowing and being sweaty and snapping beans, but also the wonderful smells from the kitchen, including my mother's applesauce. Really incredible smell. Let me go back here on some comments here. Andy, what have you seen any of the John Wick movies? I'm not familiar with John Wick, Andy. And I don't know if you can call it an Easter egg, but I noticed on John Wick 3, there was a scene from the Buster Keaton General in it. Maybe. I don't know. I wish I was more familiar. I'm afraid I can't comment there. Though I love Buster Keaton, and I love the movie The General. I think Buster Keaton was a genius. Joyce, yes, let's please set aside some time to connect. We will. I promise you. Yeah, things have really stepped up for me lately. I've been incredibly busy. And you even said that when you did my solar return astrological chart. You said I was going to be getting more psychic. I was going to be getting a lot busier. In fact, Pam, you told me that also in reading you did for me. And so far, it is very much coming true. But the great thing is, I'm doing things that I love and I'm passionate about, things that excite me and make me feel alive, and including these live streams. It's always a pleasure to connect with every one of you. Or it said, Lady Sasha likes to keep everyone in suspense. Yes, where is the little dear? I'm looking at, she's up on top of a shelf now. She is quite a character, and any of you who've ever had Siamese cats know what I mean. Siamese cats, it's like having 10 different cats, 10 different personalities. And sometimes you get 3, 4, or 5 of those all at once. I call her my little psychopath, but you see, she's adorable. And I think you see, she loves me and I love her. I can't believe she's 10 years old now. Andy, your mom used to make applesauce, grape jelly, apple pies. Yeah, my mother used to make apple pies. My mother loved to bake. And, I just grew up with it, cakes, pies, cookies, and probably, I can't say I took it for granted, because I certainly appreciated it and loved it. And I knew the work that my mother put into it. But I think I became surprised after I was an adult and on my own, how few people bake. I grew up with it, so I just assumed, well, everybody's mother bakes. Because most mothers now are too busy to be baking. Many have their own careers now, lives and things. My mother, bless her soul, she was a full-time housewife and mother. And I think, just like my father loved to work in the garden, I think with my mother, it calmed her nerves to bake in the kitchen. And I have a lot of her recipes, and I'm one of those disastrous cooks who can burn water. I can burn water. I'm bad. But for some mysterious reason, I can bake really well. And of course, it's been pointed out to me that when you're baking, all you have to do is just literally follow the recipe. But I'm still stunned by it, because I remember one of my very first attempts at a cake on my own, maybe 30 years ago. Remember that episode of I Love Lucy? The chocolate factory, but remember where Ricky and Fred were taking over the duties of Lucy and Ethel being house husbands, and Ricky was making the dinner, and of course he made 4 pounds of rice and it overflowed. Well, anyway, Fred volunteered to make the dessert, a juicy 7-layer chocolate cake, and he pulls the lid off and the cake is like flat as a pancake. That's how my cake turned out. And I followed the recipe to the letter. So for years, I was convinced I couldn't even bake. I was convinced. I never even wanted to try it again. And it was years later, it was a Christmas with my sister and her kids in Colorado. And we were talking about, oh, God, I wish we had Mom's carrot cake. It was so good. And I said, well, I've got the recipe in my phone. I've got a picture of the recipe, her actual handwritten recipe, and including all of her little idioms. Like, she didn't say put in 16 ounces of confectionery sugar. She said put in a box of confectionery sugar. Directions like that where you have to go, well, how much is in a box? So you had to kind of guess. But everyone implored me to attempt to make the carrot cake. I thought, well, okay, I'll try it. And it was a lot of work, because it's about 3 hours when you're making a cake like that from scratch. Grinding up. I know you can get carrots pre-ground, but I ground the carrots myself and chopped the nuts and everything and made the frosting from scratch. Everything. It was 3 layers, and everything seemed to go to course. Put it in the oven. And we went back to watching Christmas movies. I think we watched the Polar Express, or some of us called it the Bipolar Express. That was our little Joke. Uh, and there was this nice smell coming from the kitchen. It was very familiar. And I thought, it smells like it's actually cooking. It's actually baking. And timer went off. I went and opened the oven up. I had these perfect layers. They hadn't fallen flat or anything. Put them out on the rack, let them cool, made the frosting. And a little later that evening, I served the cake and I took the first bite. And I was stunned. I thought, this tastes just like the way Mom made it. I mean, I was stunned. I really thought I was an imbecile in the kitchen and could not possibly do that. But I managed to make my mother's carrot cake replicate it perfectly. So that's where I got the courage to try more baking. And I find I can do it. I just can't cook worth a damn. Where's some other comments here? Oh yeah, Ward, you were talking about how timeless and classic the Buster Keaton movies are. I will always love Buster Keaton for many reasons. I met his widow. I should say I started to say his wife. I should correctly say his widow, Eleanor Keaton, a few years ago. Actually, pardon me for drinking here. I think it was more like in the 90s, closer to 30 years ago. And very sweet lady. Very, very, very dedicated to keeping her husband's memory and legacy alive. She was much younger than him. I think she was only about, I'd have to look this up, but I think she was about 21 and he was already in his 40s when they married, but they had an extremely devoted marriage. Buster had a couple of disastrous marriages before that. One to the silent screen actress, Norma Talmadge. And in both cases, the wives just cleaned him out in the divorce court, and there were custody battles. But anyway, Buster just lost everything. And it coincided with his career going south. And a lot of that had to do, he was in 1925, the #1 box office draw in the world. And along came sound, around 1928, 29. And he made his transition fairly okay to sound movies, but he never had quite the same acceptance as was true for many of the silent stars. A handful made it bigger, like Laurel and Hardy did very well. In fact, they did even better in sound. Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, they did better in sound, but there were people like Gloria Swanson, Clara Bow, Norma Talmadge, who didn't do so well. In fact, Gloria Swanson famously capitalized upon that years later when Billy Wilder approached her to do the movie Sunset Boulevard. And while she was not playing herself by any means, the character did share similarities with her. Once the biggest star in the world in silent pictures, and then sound came around and her career was destroyed. And of course, Norma Desmond became this tragic recluse in her old decaying mansion with her butler Max, who had been her first husband. I just watched that again recently, a few nights ago. Incredible movie if you've never seen it. But anyway, get back to Buster Keaton. It was just a perfect storm of events that brought him down. The divorces, he lost most of his money. His career was going down, and then his drinking started accelerating. His alcoholism became seriously bad, and that just brought more things down. And anyway, by the time of the 1940s, he was working, once the biggest star in the world, mid-1940s, he was working as a $300 a week gag writer at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And by coincidence, there was this actress who had been signed at MGM with great, great hopes. They were going to build her up as this great new star. She had been blonde and they dyed her hair red, reinvented her image. It was, you might have heard of her. Her name was Lucille Ball. And Buster and Lucy were both down on their luck. They were at the studio. The studio, frankly, didn't know what to do with them. So they had a lot of time on their hands, and they formed a solid friendship, became very close. Buster used to come out to the house a lot. That she and Desi shared in Chatsworth. They called it a ranch. It was a little 5-acre piece of property, but they called it their ranch. But Buster was there a lot. In fact, there were home movies, color home movies of Buster and Lucy clowning around. Lucy loved to throw costume parties, and she and Buster are doing some business together. But Buster, he was a genius, a comedic genius, as was Miss Ball. And one of the problems with Lucy, nobody knew what to do with her because she was so unique. There'd never been anybody quite like Lucille Ball. So the studio didn't know how to handle her talent. They didn't know how to write for her. They didn't know what vehicles to put her in. I mean, they came close a few times, but by the mid 40s, she had pretty much been demoted to supporting roles. And it was a hard time for her. But Buster saw her genius. He saw it, and he made it his mission to teach Lucy everything he knew about comedy. Everything. I've talked about that before, about how you watch I Love Lucy. You can see Buster Keaton mannerisms in some of her work. And of course, they also worked together in 1965. To my awareness, it's the only time they ever worked together professionally. And it was a CBS special. It was a tribute to Stan Laurel, who had just passed away. So she and Buster did a 5-minute silent movie routine on stage. And Harvey Korman was in it playing a Keystone Cop. But they were magical together. And it's on YouTube. Look for it. I better get back to my comments here. Joyce, Andy, I love making pies. You should try it. Well, Joyce, I love pies. I wish you were here making one for me. And Renee, you love canning at your own grocery store. Yes. As I was saying about my mother, I mean, it was a lot of hard work in the summer, but for fall, winter, and the following spring, we were never at a loss for applesauce. We were never at a loss for green beans. I'm trying to remember what other vegetables we had in the deep freeze in the basement. And it's all out of Dad's garden. Vegetables grown with his love and care, and prepared with my mother's love and care. But I'm remembering my mother's apple pies. They were so good. Oh, Pomona, Pam, I'm working on jam jelly and apple cider vinegar, making apple pie filling too, and pectin. And we're also sharing with neighbors because the tree is dripping in apples. Oh, love that. I always think of that expression, like a woman very glamorous, dripping in diamonds, dripping in apples. And I'm also thinking about the Wizard of Oz. You're saying my apples aren't any good? The mean apple tree's throwing the apples. And I don't know if any of you have been keeping up on social media. There have been a lot of clips about that new version of The Wizard of Oz. It's playing in Las Vegas right now at the Sphere. The Sphere, I guess, assuming that's a hotel, Spears Hotel. I haven't been to Vegas for a while, but they used artificial intelligence and revamped the movie. And I don't know. I don't like the idea of it, because I've always said The Wizard of Oz is the closest thing Hollywood ever came to making a totally perfect movie. And when you have a totally perfect movie, you leave it alone. But anyway, they did a lot of AI additional effects to it and jazzed it up, and also made some cuts to it. I think they cut almost 28 minutes out of it, including most of the musical numbers. That alone is enough to make me want to boycott it. Well, what really makes me want to boycott it, I heard the cheapest tickets are $109, and I've heard they go up to like $500 for this. And it's sold out, I think, until November. But the clips have turned me off. But anyway, the reason I bring up the apple trees, they've got the same, of course, Dorothy and Scarecrow, and the apple tree is throwing apples at them. And they've made this a fully immersive experience. Like during the cyclone, they actually have fans blowing so you feel the wind and everything. Well, anyway, during that sequence, they have these little stuffed apples fall down from the ceiling that say the Wizard of Oz on them, and they're supposed to be very collectible. And I've heard people have been putting those on eBay trying to sell them for hundreds of dollars now. That's one way to get back the cost of your admission. So you made me think of that, Pam, when you said your apple trees are dripping with apples. And also a chance to work in my disdain for what they've done to the Wizard of Oz, because I just think that movie is sacred. I don't like this being done, but I don't know. Maybe I'd change my opinion if I actually saw it. But there are so many clips floating around on social media right now that I feel like I practically have seen the movie. No, I know it's an IMAX and all that, and I'm watching it on an iPhone. So I did see it once in IMAX, but it was the original print. And that was a spectacular experience. That really was spectacular, seeing it in IMAX, because the movie has been meticulously restored. And for a movie that's 86 years old, that's all the more amazing. When I saw it blown up on an IMAX screen, there was not a speck of dust or anything, emulsion loss, anything in the film. It looked breathtakingly perfect, like it had been shot yesterday. But then it's been cared for because it is considered possibly the most important movie ever made. Let's see, Andy, I love helping my mom make the applesauce. Although upstairs, the air vents, the dogs would stick their heads next to it and listen to our conversations. I thought maybe you were going to say the dogs were smelling the applesauce through the vents. There might be some truth to that too. Joyce, I miss having fruit trees. Yeah, we had apple trees in our yard. We had chestnut trees. And we did, remember we also had a grapevine. My parents took an old clothesline and started a grapevine on it. And I remember that as a kid. And I mean, I never washed the grapes or anything. I would just pull them off the vine and eat them there right on the spot. And they were just heaven. So sweet, so full of flavor. Joyce, you really felt the full moon eclipse? Yeah, I did too last night. In fact, Joyce, if you've got any comments or advice for us on that, please do. Joyce is a gifted astrologer, just marvelous. And she's had her own show here on YouTube. And I know you're considering bringing it back, which I hope you do, Joyce. You're so darn good at what you do, really. But yeah, I felt it too, kind of strange. I got into an argument with someone, and just strange little things like that. Everything's okay, but I knew something was off. And I think also, wasn't it the blood moon? I didn't go out to look at it, but I understand there was a period for a while where the moon was like a distinctive coppery red color. Let's see. Ward's asking, the full moon eclipsed Miss Joyce? ? It sure was big this morning. No accident. That lunatic comes from the moon. Yep, that I know. And my zodiac sign is Cancer. We're ruled by the moon. Woo! That's like a werewolf. Oh, Joyce, I think we might have had cherry trees. I'm trying to think. I mean, this is ridiculous. I should remember this, but I think maybe we did have cherry trees. I don't think we had a peach tree. I remember having neighbors who had a peach tree. And I remember but back in my small town, we were always sharing with each other. What was that joke in the movie and the play Steel Magnolias? Shirley MacLaine was bringing people like a big bag of tomatoes. And she said, that's why us Southern women grow tomatoes, so we can put them in bags and give them to each other, something like that. And it was I'm paraphrasing that line terribly, but it was true, because I remember my mother and her friends were always exchanging fruits and vegetables back and forth. But that was cool. That's one of the things I miss about small town life. There's a lot I don't, but that was one of the things I do, was just that wonderful camaraderie between neighbors. And what I remember also is that everybody pitched in to help each other. You didn't even have to ask. People just did it. It was really beautiful. Here's a story I remember. It was when my mother was dying, and my sister and I went back there to be with her. She lived for a few more weeks afterwards, but she was pretty bad off. And one of our neighbors pulled up, her car just pulled up unannounced. She had cooked us a full dinner. And I mean, like a roast beef, a pot roast, and she made biscuits and potatoes and veggies. And she even had a pie and a thing of ice cream to put on the pie. I mean, a complete dinner from top to bottom. Just pulled up and dropped it off and said, I just thought maybe this would help you guys out. You didn't have to cook tonight. I mean, I was so touched by that. And I came back here to Los Angeles and told a few friends, and friends were like, wow, who does things like that? That's incredible. Yeah. But my little hometown, people did things like that. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Oh, and Andy. Oh, Joyce, you were talking about your cherry trees, peach tree, apple trees. Italian prunes. I don't know if I'm familiar with Italian prunes. Andy, you're asking, say, Chuck, how close are you to Forest Lawn Cemetery? I see that's where Buster Keaton is buried. Well, as a matter of fact, I am a 10-minute drive from Forest Lawn. Well, I almost got tongue-tied there. I'm a 10-minute drive from Forest Lawn. And I'm one of these people, I am not the least bit creeped out by cemeteries. I'm not, because I look at cemeteries and I look at the markers and I see people who touched this world, people who had lives, people who had children, grandchildren, experiences. For some reason that seems happy to me. It's something to rejoice in, celebrate. So I'm never freaked out by cemeteries. And Forest Lawn is one of the most beautiful. We're talking about the Forest Lawn in Glendale. It's one of the most beautiful cemeteries you could ever hope to visit. It's like an exquisite park. Big trees and benches and beautiful sculptures and also beautiful mausoleums. And a lot of famous people are interred in the mausoleums, or they're either buried there. And there's a little chapel called the Wee Kirk of the Heather, where Jean Harlow had her funeral in 1937. And behind the Wee Kirk of the Heather is a meditation garden that I love. You can just go. It's so quiet. It's way up in the hills, it's surrounded by mountains. So it's insulated in such a way there's no outside noise except for the birds. All you hear are the birds in the trees chirping. And also they have a beautiful fountain. So you hear the water running, you hear the birds chirping, beautiful flowers everywhere. I love the energy. And every time I go there, nobody else is ever there. So it's like my own little private meditation spot. And some people think it's weird when I tell them I like to go to a cemetery to go write in my journal and meditate. But it's lovely. It's a lovely thing. And I've even been reluctant to tell too many people about it, because I don't want people coming and spoiling my private little spot, even though it's not my private little spot. It's there for everyone. But yeah. Well, let's see. Buster Keaton. I'm trying to remember if he's buried at the Forest Lawn in Glendale. I think it's the Forest Lawn in Burbank, which is just a little further away. They're both interesting. I think the Forest Lawn Glendale is much more spectacular, but the one in Burbank, Betty Davis is buried there. I always get a kick seeing Betty Davis's grave, and every time I've gone by there, people tend to leave packs of cigarettes on top of her grave. And the worst, somebody left a stuffed vulture on top of her grave once. I like to think Betty would have had a sense of humor about that. But there are many famous people there. I remember Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher. They're buried together there. Freddie Prinze, George Raft, Liberace is buried there. Stan Laurel. I think that's where Buster Keaton is. I'd have to look that up, or maybe one of you could look that up. I'm pretty sure he's there. Was his ward mama worked full time, but she could make fantastic pecan pies. Oh my God, I've never made a pecan pie. Those are good. Oh, Miss, so she can't stand in the kitchen for so long these days. Well, maybe she could supervise you. You could make the pies, and she could just sit there and give you instructions, tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Try it, Ward. I mean, hey, if I can make my mother's carrot cake, I bet you can make your mother's pecan pie. And you got your mother there to teach you. I had to do it. Only way I could get my mother to help me was to have a seance or a Ouija board. Sorry. I make jokes like that because my mother would get the humor. Please no, I'm not trying to be tasteless there. But anyway, I would have had to have channeled my mother for assistance. And of course I could. Oh yeah, Larry Fine of the Three Stooges is there. I believe I knew that. Joyce, perhaps you used baking soda rather than baking powder. I don't know if do you mean that to me when my cake went flat? I don't know if that's what it was. All I know is that first cake was just comically bad. It was literally that thick. At least Fred Mertz had an excuse. He put all the chocolate icing into the batter. He had that bright idea of just having it all self-contained. Let's see, Renee, you were saying you love cherries. Yes, fresh cherries are wonderful. Oh my! I'm reminded of my grandmother's farm. We had a raspberry patch, bush patch, what you call it, but my grandmother used to make her own ice cream, and we would have freshly made homemade ice cream with fresh berries on top of it. Oh my God, that was heaven. My grandmother, she was the last of the old-fashioned grannies. Spent her whole life on a farm. She baked her own bread. She got eggs out of the hen house. She milked the cows. Churned her own butter. Oh, now that I should not have taken for granted, because what I wouldn't give to have those things again. Oh, I was a lucky kid and didn't even know it. My grandmother's one of the sweetest souls on this earth. What was this? Pam, I got a bowl full of beautiful vine-ripened mini tomatoes across the fence the other night. Delicious and a beautiful addition to dinner. Oh, yeah. Well, it was your advice to me, Pam, when you were reading for me that I needed to eat more things like tomatoes. I believe you said I needed more. You were intuitively knowing I needed more lycopene, lutein, which I agreed with you on. So I have been eating a lot more tomatoes in my salads now. Oh, hi, paperback writer. I always say this whenever you come on Whimsy Show, how much I love your name, because I love writing and I just love that name, paperback writer. Let's see, Joyce said the eclipse was September 7th and 8th, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So we couldn't see it here. Well, that's what I heard. I heard it was not visible anywhere here in the Americas. But as you know, Joyce, we sure do feel them. We sure do. They are felt all over the world. I'm going through some other comments here. Oh, yes, Ward, she did it the hard way. Yes, that was Miss Davis's epitaph, is on her grave. I loved Betty Davis. I've told the story. She was my neighbor. Well, kind of, sort of, in a roundabout way. She was my neighbor. It was when I lived in West Hollywood, and she lived about 4 blocks from me. See what I mean? Kind of, sort of my neighbor. But anyway, she lived 4 blocks from me. And I had just moved out here from the East Coast. And to me, that was just the biggest thing, to be able to call up my family and my mother and father, go, Betty Davis lives down the street from me. Well, she lived she lived in an apartment building. I believe she had the upper floor to herself. And there were all kinds of stories about her. Afraid not too flattering, unfortunately. I heard stories from people who had known her or encountered her that were, well, let's put it this way. I had a friend who was a good friend of Bob Osborne, Robert Osborne of Turner Classic Movies. He and Betty were very close. And when my friend Al told me that, I said, Al, please, 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 could you set up a way for me to meet Betty Davis? And his response was, you don't want to meet that mean, neurotic old woman. I was like, what? He said, trust me. Oh, she's mean. She's nasty. She's neurotic. Trust me, you don't want to meet her. You will be so disappointed. And I was like, well, can't I find that out for myself? Make my own judgment? But, I've heard good and bad, but I heard she could be difficult. Difficult, that's putting it politely. And there is a story back in the days when I was making videos. I know I need to get back into that again. Sometimes when I do my videos, I would go to locations all around town, around Hollywood, and I would stand with that behind me and I would tell stories. And one of the things I wanted to do was go to that building in West Hollywood where Betty Davis used to live and just tell some of my stories. And I don't think I ever got around to that. That's something to do one day. But there was a doozy of a little story. And this came from my friend Al. And apparently he heard this story from Bob Osborne, her good friend. So I'm pretty sure it's true. Betty had lived in the building a while. And there was this gay couple that had just moved in, and they encountered Betty Davis in the elevator, and they're like, oh, Miss Davis, we're such fans of yours. We're such fans. And she's like, oh, thank you, and all that. And oh, Miss Davis, please, would you give us the honor of coming to our home for dinner? And to their amazement, she accepted the invitation. So they set out. They got out all the good china, all the crystal, polished up all the silver, the Irish linen tablecloth, their best of the best of the best. They put this whole lavish dinner together. Betty came, showed up on time, very punctual. They had pleasant conversation, and she stayed for a while, and then she invited them to her home for dinner. Yes. They were so excited. So like a night or two later, they went over to her home. They had dinner. And then they had a little bit of conversation afterwards. And then Betty showed them to the door. And she said, you've had me for dinner. I've had you for dinner. I never want to see either of you ever again. And then she shut the door. Absolutely true story. According apparently to Bob Osborne, her friend. Yes, you did not hear that story on Turner Classic Movies, though. Oh, God. Okay, I try to scroll down here and my comments keep slipping away here. So let me see if I can find my place again. Hello, Kelly. Thank you for joining. I think I've gained 5 pounds with the pie and sweet talk. Well, I don't think vicarious sweets will do that. Unless we have a psychosomatic reaction in our body and we start puffing up and gaining weight. It makes me a little hungry right now. Yeah, Ward. You're talking about my grandmother's hand-churned ice cream. Yeah, it was amazing. And from milk from cows that my grandmother had milked. Or I should say the cream, Harry, I've never made ice cream before. I know here my grandmother did it. I should have watched her, but to this day, I don't know how to do it. I'm sure I could figure it out. But yes, Ford, it is worth the work. It is so good. Andy, I always loved when Mom would make me chocolate pudding in a cloud. Yeah, my mother used to make chocolate pudding. Renee, are we making you hungry? Paperback writer. I think we had the same grandmother. Oh, my grandmother was just amazing. She was, see, my parents had me late in life. So I have a grandmother. She was the only grandmother I ever knew because my mother's parents died before I was born, and my other grandfather died when I was about 2. So I have no conscious memory of him. So she was the only grandparent I ever knew. But she was born in 1898, lived her whole life on a farm. She was a school teacher. She was a school teacher in one of those one-room little red schoolhouses out in the country. This is a cool story. It was 1916, and it was her first year teaching. She was out of college. And at the time, the rules were very strict for a school teacher. You had to be chaperoned. And it was in your contract that if you were not married, you could not live alone. You had to live with a family. You had to be fully chaperoned at all times. So she moved in with this family in a farmhouse and fell in love with their son. And they got married the next year. And she proceeded to live in that farmhouse for the rest of her life. Gave birth to both of her children, my father and my aunt, in that house. But that's where she met him. They even had the wedding there at the house. And I've got photographs, rare old photographs from 1917 of their wedding at the farm. She was just such a cool lady. It was really my loss that I didn't spend more time talking to her in greater detail about her life and her stories. But all I know is she was the quintessential grandma. That's what I called her, grandma. And she had her long gray hair, like mine, pulled back in a bun, always had an apron tied around her waist, glasses, the works, just granny to the max. I loved her dearly. So paperback writer, I think we had the same grandmother, huh? And you're saying for your information, it's cool up on the bottom, then pudding in the middle. Okay, I don't think my mother ever made it that way, but it certainly sounds good. Oh, paperback writer, your next paperback. It's about an actress. I'm sure I will because, pardon me here, contact lens. As you know, I love biography stories of old Hollywood stars and so forth. And, I think I've got it here. Where we go? Sunset Boulevard, 4K. And not too many people have 4K players. In fact, not too many people buy discs anymore because we all stream. But if you have a high definition 4K television, which most of us have now, what you have to have also is a 4K Blu-ray player. And with these discs, it looks like you're watching a pristine projected movie in a theater. It's stunning. I only have a handful of 4K discs, but this movie just came out because Sunset Boulevard had its 75th anniversary a month ago, and they released this on the same day. I just had to have it. And Nancy, is her name Nancy Olson? She played Betty Schaefer. She was 21 when she did the movie. She's 97. Still looks fabulous, and her memory is sharp as ever. And I've seen some great interviews with her talking about the making of the movie. One story was it was a scene where she and William Holden had to kiss on the back lot at Paramount, and Billy Wilder's instructions were, do not break the kiss until I tell you to, until I yell cut. Not until I yell cut. You just keep kissing. Well, they were very much into the scene. They were really into the scene. And William Holden's wife was there on the set, and it finally she was on and went, "Cut, damn it, cut." She tells that story in the interview. And I saw a screening of this maybe 20 years ago at the Motion Picture Academy, and she came out on stage for a Q&A with the audience. But it's all the more remarkable that the movie's 75 years old, and we have a cast member who's still with us. And dear friend of mine, her late husband was the script clerk on Sunset Boulevard. And he had some nice little stories, but mostly it was how much he loved William Holden. They became lifelong friends. And he also adored Gloria Swanson. And he was quick to say, oh, she was nothing like that character. Please know that. She was not Norma Desmond. Gloria Swanson was fun to be with, gracious, friendly. She loved to make jokes, but she was just an extraordinary actress. And the role of Norma Desmond, she was frankly born to play that part. There was originally offered to Mae West. I love Mae West, but I just could not fathom her in that part. Well, much as I love Mae West, I think Mae West was more of a personality than she was an actress. I think she was limited as an actress, but her personality on screen was just one of a kind and iconic. But Mae turned the role down because she did not want to play the role of a has-been actress. She felt that was beneath her. It was the same reason Cary Grant, he was first offered the role of Norman Maine in the Judy Garland version of A Star is Born. He would have been extraordinary, but he didn't want to play the role of a loser. Now, his words, I don't want to play a loser. I don't want to play a washed-up has-been. So a lot of actors are just very careful of their image. Gloria Swanson, she had no problem accepting that role. She was very smart about it. And she was well aware, yeah, people are going to make comparisons because I was a silent screen star too. And yes, my career got washed up with sound and all that and all, but she didn't end up tragic like Norma Desmond. She didn't lose her mind like Norma Desmond. She wasn't a narcissist like Norma Desmond. She also didn't shoot her young lover and have him fall into the swimming pool. In fact, when people would say that to her, oh, are you like Norma Desmond? She'd say, sure, come see the dead man in my bathtub. But my friend's late husband had lovely things to say about her. How wonderful she was to work with, very professional. And he said everybody knew when they were making that movie, they were creating something special. He said that actors, directors, people who were working on other movies at Paramount would come over on their breaks to watch the filming. And there was also a lot of people who wanted to come and watch the evening rushes from the film. Everybody knew an amazing film was being created, something rightly so that was going to be film history. And, it's fresh in my mind, having just watched it again a few nights ago. And I was just blown away by it, how it doesn't fall into cliche. It somehow stays fresh. It stays relevant. And it's very poignant. Norma's story is very poignant because I think this was one of the first movies, maybe not the first. I mean, arguably you could say a film like A Star is Born, the original 1937 version of A Star is Born. But this was one of the first movies to really go into the dark side of Hollywood, to go into the dark side of fame. It's a woman who was once the most famous woman in the world. Hence, like what I was saying about Buster Keaton. And now she was completely forgotten about. I mean, she was rich. She was well taken care of. She had her mansion, all that, but she'd lost her career. The one thing that really mattered to her, it was her identity was so wrapped up in that. And I've seen that, having lived in Los Angeles all these years, in my line of work in the health industry. I used to, as you well know, I've worked with a lot of celebrities. And when I say celebrities, I don't mean just the big A-list people. There were plenty of those. There were also a lot of the minor actors, supporting players, the ones who once were big. They got small, but the people who were once big, who are now, well, as some would cruelly say, has-beens. And I saw how it affected those people. I saw how neurotic some of them were and how lost they were, because that was their identity. They'd worked so hard to make it. They made it for a while, and then it got taken away from them, and then they didn't know what to do. I witnessed that a lot. It's sad. And so I was reminded of that as I was watching Sunset Boulevard and the Norma Desmond character. And of course, we all know Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman as Nora Desmond and Max. Oh, they were masterful together. I'm sure it's on YouTube, but Gloria Swanson was a fan of the Carol Burnett show, and Gloria Swanson loved The Takeoff, and she wrote Carol Burnett a letter asking to be a guest star on the show, and she did, I think back in 1973. To my great disappointment, she did not play Norma Desmond again. I thought, wouldn't that have been great to have had dueling Normas? But I think Gloria Swanson knew that character was sacred, serious. It was sacred, and she wanted to leave it alone. Just leave it where it was in the movie and not touch it. Too sacred to her. So it was a wise thing, but something she did do. If you recall from Sunset Boulevard, there is a sequence where Gloria Swanson does a masterful impersonation of Charlie Chaplin. And so on the Carol Burnett show, that's what she did. She did her Charlie Chaplin impersonation. And I think, was that the one where Carol Burnett played Buster Keaton? I'd have to go back and look at it. I know there was a time Carol Burnett played Buster Keaton and did a really good job. I love Carol Burnett. Let me get back to some comments here. Let's see, Joyce. In high school, we had to take home economics. During the cooking segment, we prepared a meal for selected teachers. We made biscuits, and they turned out greenish and flat and hard. I hope you gave those to the teachers you didn't like. That is a Martian biscuits, Joyce. They tasted really bad. That is a great regret of mine that I did not take home ec in high school. It was still the era, and I think also because it was a little southern town, boys didn't take classes like that. And of course, we now know what nonsense that is. And I think now it's very common for boys to take home ec. I mean, it's just giving you basic skills, and it's a lot of skills that would have made my life a lot easier. So I really regret not doing that. I am glad I took a typing class in high school. Really glad for that. That was decades before I knew we were going to have laptops and computers and all that. But boy, that skill has served me so well over the years. Let's see, I'm here reading about the Martian beaten biscuits. Green biscuits would go great with green eggs and ham. Yeah. Let me find my place here again. God, I just skipped over a lot of comments here. Darn it. And I got to find where I was. There we go. Okay, back to where I was. Award in that quote unquote, that candid tape with her meeting Mae West. Miss West did come across as being more friendly than Miss Davis. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That was a documentary. I don't know if documentary is the word for it, but it was on, I know it played on Amazon Prime for a while. I'm sure you can find it somewhere, where there was an actual meeting of Betty Davis and Mae West. It turned out Betty Davis was a huge Mae West fan. And apparently Mae West was a Betty Davis fan. They had never met in all their years in Hollywood. So this was sometime in the 1970s. A mutual friend arranged a get together for them. And that friend, unbeknownst to Miss Davis and Miss West, put a tape recorder underneath the couch or something, hid it away, and recorded all the conversation. So that documentary, using that word loosely, they had actors recreating Betty Davis and Mae West, and they were lip syncing to the audio recording. But it did kind of recreate the experience. And the actress who played Betty Davis, I actually knew her. I worked with her once. Karen Talia. I did a play with her once. And I remember at the time she was getting print work as a Betty Davis lookalike. And also she would go to parties and events where they needed celebrity lookalikes. So I was really happy for her. She got cast in this playing Betty Davis. Let's see. Yes, I'm giving product endorsement here, and I don't mean to be doing that. We're not supposed to do that on YouTube, but what the heck. Joyce, I should make a carrot cake when the carrots have had the first frost. Oh, Joyce, carrot cake is always something to go to. It is divine. I don't know of anyone who doesn't love carrot cake. What was this? When you said that, what you said, I thought the story was turning soylent green when you said they had each other for dinner. Oh, okay. No, they didn't. Not that way of having each other for dinner. Though I'm thinking of that Twilight Zone episode. You know, the one where the outer space creatures, they landed their spaceship and they come and they shake hands with all the Earthlings and everything. And they have this book called To Serve Man. So all the Earthlings are like, whoa, aren't they special? They came here to serve us. Isn't that great? Well, at the end of the show, it turns out that book, To Serve Man, oh no, it was How to Serve Man. It was a cookbook. How to Serve Man. So you're making me think of that. Oh, Extreme Brands. Hello. Making homemade butter is easy. Definitely recommended. My grandmother did it, but I have never tried it. No, all I can think of is Ethel Mertz. You know, Pioneer Women, where Lucy makes that 13-foot loaf of bread and Ethel makes the butter. And what's funny, that episode was 1952. And the joke was when Ethel shows her plate of butter, she goes, all this butter, and it only costs like $23 and something. Of course, in 1952, $23 was, a lot more money. I'd have to calculate that. I think close to $100 or something. But here it is, the year 2025. That joke somehow still works. Of course, the way the prices are going up in the grocery store, that might be a joke that's going to get lost very soon. Ward, your Nana was born in 1894, but from New York City. She got to see Halley's Comet in 1910 and 1986. That is so special. Oh, I love that. Extreme Brands. My grandmother was born in 1877. I was born in 1965. Older parents. Yeah, I had older parents. See, and in turn, my mother, her parents were like in their 40s, and they had her. My mother was 40 and she had me. So I had, I told you both my grandparents on her side passed away before I was born, but my grandfather was born in 1885. 1885. And he fought in the Spanish-American War. My grandfather. It blows me away. I've got some of his old photographs, and he also traveled the world. He was in Shanghai in the year 1902. I've got a wonderful picture of him when he was 22 years old in his sailor uniform and his mustache and everything, hair parted in the middle, looking very dashing. I have no doubt. A young man that far away from home, he probably had the proverbial woman in every port. I just have that feeling about him, the way he looked, and you could just see he was a bit of a very debonair kind of wolf. Hey, he's my grandfather. But it was in Shanghai, and my sister went to China a few years ago, and she went to Shanghai, and she went specifically to Shanghai so she could find the spots where our grandfather had been. Let's see, what are some other comments here? Let's see. American author Mark Twain was born and died on the days that Halley's Comet passed Earth. Interesting. I never knew that. I mean, Joyce. I was just about to say an astrologer could have a field day with that. Joyce, if you're listening, that might be interesting for you to do Mark Twain's birth chart. The fact that he was born and died on the days of Halley's Comet passing Earth. In fact, Joyce, that would be a show for you to do in the future when you bring your show back. Just think about it. Just think about it. You're very good at what you do. That would be a fascinating topic. Let's see. Oh yeah, Andy, I mentioned that about Carol Burnett doing Sunset Boulevard. I'm going back on comments here. That's interesting. I didn't know that Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, himself predicted that he'd leave the world during Halley's return. Wow, and your Nana said she could see Halley's Comet in downtown Manhattan in 1910. And supposedly each time the comet comes back, it's smaller and dimmer. It loses its luster, going all the way out in the solar system and coming back again. So I'm sure it was much brighter in 1910, but it'd be interesting to know what her recollections were and her memories seeing it the second time. Yeah. Oh yeah. You're talking about Harvey Korman playing von Stroheim's part. Oh yeah. I still remember the very first time I saw Sunset Boulevard. I was 13 years old, and I was just the right age to see it, because about a year and a half before that was when I really started getting into old Hollywood. I started reading biographies, movie books. Our PBS stations would show up. There's Sasha, would start. Yes, are you joining the show? You joined the show? She's saying, well, okay, maybe I'll grace you with my presence for a little bit. Here we are. What was I talking about? Shoot, I lost. What was I talking about? When I was just the right age to see Sunset Boulevard. I was 13, but I was astute enough to really appreciate the silent era and the story of Norma Desmond and so forth. And I remember sitting there seeing it for the very first time. And one of the reasons it was interesting to me was because I knew it primarily from Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman. So I wanted to see the real Norma Desmond and Max. And there was that line where William Holden and Eric von Stroheim are talking, and he drops the bombshell. I was Miss Desmond's first husband. And I remember as a 13-year-old kid going, I was stunned when I heard that. And I could never look at Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman the same way again. Yes, Sasha. Let's see, there's some other comments here. Yeah, oh yeah, okay. I've seen things I've already talked about here. These are older comments. Remember, Miss Swenson did the Chaplin impression. Oh yeah, when Miss Swenson did the Chaplin impression during Sunset Boulevard, and that's right. And of course, and then she recreated it on the Carol Burnett show. And the Carol Burnett shows, thankfully, are very accessible now. I think there's a 24-hour Carol Burnett channel on Amazon Prime, plus a lot of them on her YouTube. Oh, thank you. Someone's sending me hearts there. And hi, Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Thank you for joining. Oh, I love all your little symbols there. And let's see here. I'm trying to do this without having my screen go blip. I think Sunset Boulevard might have been at least partially based on Mary Pickford's latter years. Yes. Billy Wilder talked about that. Well, he said it wasn't just Mary Pickford. I think he cited Norma Talmadge, Mary Pickford, Clara Bow. There might have been one other actress. She was kind of a conglomeration of several, including Gloria Swanson herself. But it is true, Mary Pickford did end up becoming quite a recluse in her last years, but I don't think she quite lost her mind like Norma Desmond did. It wasn't quite as dramatic as that. But yeah, Pickfair. She holed herself up in Pickfair. And I think the last appearance she ever made was 1976. She was given an honorary Oscar, and she wouldn't go to the ceremony. So they had to bring the cameras to her house, and she accepted her Oscar in her living room. But she looked lovely. She looked really lovely. And it was her decision what to do, but I wish she had gone to the ceremony and come out in front of the audience and gotten the standing ovation that she deserved to have. I mean, she was one of the true pioneers of the motion picture industry, and probably the first female pioneer, truly great female pioneer of the motion picture industry. Aside from being one of the first movie stars, she was also one of the first women to head her own studio, which she did alongside Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Senior, Douglas Fairbanks Sr., her husband, and Charlie Chaplin. Was it D.W. Griffith? It was United Artists. They formed United Artists, and she kept control of that for a long, long time. Oh wait, no, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford. It might have been D.W. Griffith. Let's see, but yes, Norma was definitely partially based on Mary Pickford. Oh yeah, Paperback Writer. One of the things I love about Sunset Boulevard is how dark the cinematography is. It really sets the whole tone for Norma Desmond. Well, it was very much a film noir motion picture. I did some reading on this after I watched this the other night, and I saw that Paramount wanted to film the movie in color. And it was Billy Wilder who rejected the color. He said, no, we have to do this in black and white. And he purposely wanted that moody film noir look, to capture the gloom of Norma Desmond's mansion, the decay of her mansion, the circumstances. So yes, it was extremely intentional. It was the cinematographer and the director, but ultimately the bottom line was Billy Wilder, the director. The director always calls the final shots. Speaking of Billy Wilder, I watched a little bit of The Apartment on Amazon. That was one of his other masterpieces. Won the Best Picture Oscar. He got an Oscar for directing, writing. And I think it was Anne Bancroft who was talking about this in an interview. And she was talking about how Billy Wilder made Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, and The Apartment. And she said, all three of those movies came from the same heart. And I thought, what a lovely way of putting it. They came from the same heart. Because Sunset Boulevard, The Apartment, or Some Like It Hot, can you imagine more different movies? But each of them very brilliant in their own right. Oh yes, that is true. Extreme Brands. Mary Pickford was offered the role, and I think, like Mae West, she was very insulted by it, by being asked to play a washed-up has-been. I'm trying to remember who. Oh yes, Billy Wilder also tried to get Greta Garbo to come out of retirement, and as much as I strongly believe Gloria Swanson was born to play that role, I love Greta Garbo. I think Greta Garbo would have played the hell out of that part. She would have brought so much poignancy to it, and she would have been extremely believable. And of course, Garbo, started in silent movies. Her silent movies are incredible, but she, even with her Swedish accent, she made an incredible transition to sound movies. That was not a problem for her, but she could have played Norma Desmond. She just wasn't willing to come out of retirement. Though I do realize that the year before, in 1949, Greta Garbo was trying to make a comeback. She actually did a screen test. She was 41 at the time, and she still was beautiful. Sasha, come here. My cat can't decide what she wants to do. So we'll let her sit here just for the moment until she starts squirming and she wants back down. Yeah, people are saying this too close to home. Gigi Pardo Lord. Hello, Chuck and everyone. Hi. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you for joining us. Let me find my place again. Gosh, I hate this when I try to scroll down and my whole screen disappears. Lord, some of the most famous chefs are men. Oh yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, I understand it can be quite macho and misogynistic in the kitchen with chefs. It's odd, but there is. I've heard there's a lot of prejudice against women chefs, and of course that's very unfair and unjust. But you know how men can be. Sasha, what are you doing? Let's see, Extreme Brand. She felt offended at the age, rather. Well, that's quite possible, because it's specifically in the script. It's not just in the script. It's intrinsic to the plot of the movie that Norma Desmond is a 50-year-old woman. Oh, the horror of it, 50 years old. But, you know, for an actress, especially in those days, that a lot of actresses, their ingenue leading lady days were over once they hit a certain age. And for her, it was really over. And it was, you know, Norma, the narcissist, she had a lot of trouble accepting her age, right down to falling in love with a much, much younger man. Let's see, what are some other comments here? Oh, Kelly. Oh, your battery's getting low. Well, thank you for joining us, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Extreme Bands. Yes, that's true. Many stars didn't know each other if they were not at the same studio. That's absolutely true, because they were working all the time. In fact, it was Betty Davis who talked about that once in an interview. She addressed it. She said, people just assumed that I knew all of Hollywood royalty and everything. We were just all friends hobnobbing. And she said, no, I didn't have time. You know, she said, when you worked at the studio, especially if you were a woman, you often had to be in hair, and you had to be up like 4:30 in the morning to get to the studio for hair and makeup, work a full day, and then get home, eat dinner, and then be in bed by 9 o'clock so you could get up the next morning and start over again. That was truly the case. And Betty was talking like, she said she always wished she had known Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. Mae West. She never had met Mae West until the 1970s. Interesting, isn't it? Let me see if I can scroll this without getting everything to move. Okay, so far so good. I'm seeing older comments here, things that we've already talked about. Joyce, I have a funny story about a carrot cake I made in Tucson. It was for Thanksgiving. Let me see if you told the story. Oh, Joyce, Mark Twain. Okay, he's one of your ancestors. Oh, Joyce, this might be, when you decide to bring your show back to YouTube, that might be your first show. Talk about your relative, Mark Twain, and do his chart and talk about Haley's Comet when he was born and when he died. I'd love to watch that. Nancy, more talking about one of your mother's cousins was one of Mr. Clemens' second cousins, twice removed. It's interesting to have someone that illustrious in your family. He was such a great writer and humorist. And you know something I love about Mark Twain? He loved cats. I don't know if you knew that. He loved cats so much that when he would be traveling and he had to stay in hotels or rent houses, he would rent cats. He would rent people's cats so he wouldn't have to be without them. And occasionally he would fall so much in love with a cat that he would try to adopt it. But he had many cats of his own. And what was it? I think he had a famous saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it terribly, but something about any person who likes cats is a friend of mine. Well, I tend to subscribe to that belief also, because people would say to me, I don't like cats. I'm like, really? Kind of turns me off. It's a little bit of a red flag there. I adore them. Now, I can respect if somebody has an allergy to cats or something, but otherwise they're amazing animals. Even you, Sasha. She's over here now. What is that, Ward? That's true. Norma and Max were a more shocking pair than Ed and Eunice. That's true. I hadn't thought about it that way. Oh, yes, when Carol would go, George. That was her character, Zelda. Oh, that was funny. Yeah. What was it? Yeah, but Miss Pickford's Oscar presentation would be the last time Pickfair would be seen intact by the public. Yeah, that's a good point, too. I'm sure you all know the story about Pia Zadora and her husband. They bought Pickfair. I think it was owned by, was it Jerry Buss of the Lakers who owned Pickfair for a while? And of course, the joke was they should rename it Bus Fair. But anyway, Pia Zadora and her husband bought it, and then they tore it down. Oh, there here in Los Angeles, there was horror from preservationists over that, historians. And she claimed that it was infested with termites and it couldn't be saved. But I don't know how true that really was. I think she just wanted to rebuild another house on the site, but she tore down Pickfair. No longer exists. One of the most famous homes ever, really. Really, certainly one of the most famous homes in America, certainly here in Los Angeles and Hollywood. Let's see here. Let's see, Joyce said you had a funny story about a carrot cake. Oh, yeah, D.W. Griffith. Yes, he was the other partner in United Artists. And Extreme Brands agrees with me. Garbo would have been fantastic. Well, Garbo was just brilliant, honestly, in anything she ever did. She's one of my very favorite actresses. And you know what? Something interesting about Greta Garbo. Independently, in separate interviews, Katharine Hepburn, Bette Davis, and Meryl Streep all separately cited Greta Garbo as their favorite actress of all time. And Bette Davis even said, and Bette was an extremely astute judge of acting ability and talent. She said Garbo was the one person she couldn't pin down. She said, I cannot explain what Greta Garbo does other than witchcraft. She said, all I know is there was never a more effective actress before the camera than Miss Garbo. And Hepburn cited her, another great actress. Same thing. Norma Taylor. Well, first of all, she hated being called Liz. I know that because I've told that story about her assistant tried to arrange a lunch for us. And he said, whatever you do not call her Liz. Address her as Elizabeth. And actually, until she says otherwise, refer to her as Dame Taylor. Be very formal in the beginning, and she would give me permission to call her Elizabeth. But Elizabeth was way too young. She was, I think she was still a teenager when that movie was made. You know, that was around I think it was the next year she did A Place in the Sun with Montgomery Clift. She was very young. But if you mean when Elizabeth Taylor was older, well, Elizabeth Taylor was a remarkable actress. I'm sure she would have had it in her had she been older, perhaps. What was this? Renee said that's what Julia Child said when she lived overseas and went to cooking school. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what the comment was before that. I missed it. What was it? What did she say? She lived overseas and went to cooking school. I love that movie, Julia and Julia. I loved it so much that I read the book. You know, it's based on, I think, 2 books, but I read Julia Child's book about her years in Paris. I loved the movie so much. What I loved was it was about passion and finding your joy in life, your joyous passion in life. And for her, it was discovering cooking. I was in heaven. And I even loved when she flunked cordon bleu. And to the teacher, she went, it's like, oh, so what? So what? There's a lot of inspiring lessons in that. And was that Meryl Streep incredible? that movie was first announced and she was going to play her, I just thought, I don't see that. I do not in a million years see Meryl Streep playing Julia Child, but by golly, she pulled it off. Pulled it off. Got an Oscar nomination. I thought she should have won. She was just stunning. And I loved all the tricks they made because Julia Child was 6'2", so they had to make Meryl Streep look 6'2". So to create the illusion, they had to cast shorter actors. They had to have big platforms on Meryl Streep's shoes. They had to like build the furniture scale. The kitchen countertops had to be lower to make her look taller. But they created the illusion very well. And Meryl Streep just said, she just focused on being big. I just thought that I was big. I believed it. Yes, Ward was pointing out Miss Taylor was only 18 at the time. Oh, Drops of Jupiter. Hi, Drops of Jupiter. Love your name, too. So many cool names on here. Let's see. James Cagney wrote that at Warner Brothers, they worked 6 days a week and they would wrap a film, immediately start the next film. That's very true. Very true. That's why the actors often didn't socialize each other. They worked very hard. I knew that anyway, but I was also friends with one of the old movie stars. I've told this. I knew Evelyn Keyes very well. I loved Evelyn Keyes, my dear, dear friend, my friend, the movie star, who was, of course, Sue Ellen in Gone with the Wind. Yeah, but she used to tell me all the stories about how you had to be at the studio, hair and makeup very early in the morning. And it wasn't simple. It was often you'd have to have body makeup on your legs, your arms, your chest, had to have your hair done, you had to have your nails done, full makeup, quite a production. And she used to tell me about how she and Rita Hayworth, they became best friends. They would sit together under the hairdryer at Columbia Studios and getting their nails done and everything and gossiping. But yeah, that's so true. She said that the studios made you work. If you weren't making a film, then they were sending you out on publicity tours, or they were having you make personal appearances, or they were having you shoot publicity photos or doing interviews, but you were always working. Always. Joyce, okay, here's the story. You know how labor intensive making a carrot cake is? Oh, yes, I just told that. It takes me about 3 hours to do it. And I destroy my kitchen. My kitchen looks like Hiroshima. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off in my kitchen by the time I'm done. But anyway, he said, you know how labor intensive making a carrot cake is? I made a lovely carrot cake sheet cake with cream cheese frosting. I brought it to my next door neighbors for dinner. Yeah. Is there more? And let's see here. I thought you were going to maybe tell a little more here. You said you had a funny story. I thought maybe you meant you dropped the cake or something. I don't know. Maybe you're going to tell more here. Let's see. Looking at comments here. Speaking of Charlotte. Oh, Andy, when Dan Aykroyd did Julia Child. Oh, my God. That was wicked. Wicked. Oh, dear, I caught the dickens out of my wrist. He's there bleeding to death on the counter. They even showed that in Julia and Julia. I don't know if Julia Child herself ever saw that. I tend to think she might have been offended by it. Andy speaking, going with the win. It was interesting when we lost one of the actresses from that movie, and she's lower. Oh, you're thinking of Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland lived to be either 103 or 104. It was quite remarkable to have her around that long. Yeah, that's Rene when he was chopping the chicken. Yes. Oh, yeah. After I see the comments after I've already said here, yes, that was Olivia de Havilland lived to be 104. Oh, yeah. Yes, the parody on the electric company called Julia Grown Up. Yeah, I remember that one. Oh, and Joyce, I didn't mean to put down your story or anything. I'll be there and take it that way. I didn't know if you were telling more to it, but but you made a lovely carrot sheet cake with cream cheese frosting. I've never made it as a sheet cake. I've always done it 3 layers, big tall cake. My family always loves it when I make it. My family refers to it as like capital THE, the carrot cake. Chuck, are you going to make the carrot cake for us? So I always end up getting talked into it. My family's together for holidays. Any other comments here? Julia Grown Up. Hattie McDaniel's brother and sister, etc. Were on Three Stooges shorts. Yeah, I knew they all worked. Because Hattie McDaniel's brother was on an episode of I Love Lucy. He played a train porter. I think it was the episode where Lucy pulled the brake on the train several times and kept stopping the train over and over. And the way they accomplished that special effect, they had the set actually built on springs. It was a very lavish set. So when Lucy would pull that thing, that's how they got the set to shake like that. It's very funny. Joyce, there's more of the story. Then, okay, Joyce, I knew you weren't finished with your story. Then my neighbor John took a bite and made an awful face. I wondered why the cake batter never creamed like it usually did. Months before, I put a large bag of salt in a plastic container. Oh my God. Oh, Joyce, that's like the movie Coal Miner's Daughter, about Loretta Lynn, Sissy Spacek, Tommy Lee Jones. That's a scene in the movie when Loretta Lynn is 13 years old and Tommy Lee Jones, played Doolittle, her future husband, bought her pie at an auction and cuts it, takes a bite, and same thing. He's like, water. And it turns out that instead of sugar, she put salt in the pie. Oh, Joyce, I'm so sorry. Oh, no. And I know myself how the hard work that goes into making a carrot cake. Oh, I'm so sorry that happened, Joyce. Of course, it does make a funny story to tell later. But, you must have been heartsick at the time. That's, something I can think of on par with that. Yeah, it wasn't my personal experience, but a friend was telling me he was Italian, had an Italian mother who loved to make wonderful, it was some kind of chicken soup that she made entirely from scratch, where you spend hours cutting up all the vegetables and everything and making the pasta yourself and putting it all in the pot and cooking it. And she was there stirring the big pot of soup, and she grabbed the container of salt. Meant to sprinkle a little in. The whole top came off. Dumped the whole thing of salt into the soup. Hours and hours of work, just ruined, obliterated. Oh dear. I guess we all have stories like that. Oh yeah, it's funny. I'm here talking, and then I go back and read the comments, and I see that you've already mentioned the things I've already mentioned, like salt for sugar. Yeah, same thing happened to Loretta Lynn. She met her husband. Yeah. Let's see. Gigi Pardo Lord, fun facts for you. I live in Chelsea across the seminary. Our street is famous for the past neighbors of Clark Gable, Anthony Hopkins, Deborah Harry from Blondie. Yeah. That was like me. I have a few here in my neighborhood, Los Feliz. I have some famous neighbors, like Angelina Jolie lives about a 5-minute drive down the road. Brad Pitt's like 5 minutes in another direction. I forget all the celebrities that live here, but when I lived in West Hollywood, that's where I really had a lot of celebrity neighbors. It's exciting in the beginning. It really is. And I thought I would never become jaded to it. But after years and years and years of it, they just became like regular people to me. I never thought that was going to happen. In fact, one of my neighbors I became close to was Ellen Corby, who played Grandma Walton on the Waltons. Adored her. And Joyce, needless to say, that cake went right into the trash. Oh, and you probably had people going, well, what are we going to have for dessert now? Oh, you poor thing. I'm so sorry that happened. Oh, you did. Okay, you had an ice cream instead. At least you had that on hand. Kate, remember those Loretta Lynn Crisco commercials? Yes, I do. That's well, when Dew and I are here in the kitchen. Remember those? That's when Loretta Lynn was having a bit of a renaissance because of the movie Coal Miner's Daughter. That movie was a major, major hit. Sissy Spacek won the Best Actress Oscar for it. And I've always considered that one of the most unique performances ever to win an Oscar, because she was 30, I think in her early, around 30 or so at the time she made it. She believably played Loretta Lynn from the age of 13 to 33. And like the whole first third of the movie is when she is 13 years old. And there's a bit, it's very intrinsic to the story, how she got married at 13 and started having babies. I can think of very few actors who could have pulled that off. I mean, it's one thing to maybe look young or something, but to be believable, to actually go into the soul of a 13-year-old the way she did. I mean, you believed her on screen. And I think that had a lot to do with why she won the Oscar, those sequences as a 13-year-old. And then, of course, she did her own singing and in true Oscar form. She also had her big scene where she had her nervous breakdown on the stage and all. It's a great, great movie. I've had people say, oh, I don't like country music. Well, you don't have to like country music to just love a great story. And it's a great story. Great performances too. Oh yes, Crisco will do you proud. Yeah, I hadn't heard that about Angelina and Brad buying their home from Elvira, because I think the homes they have right now are homes they bought after the divorce. Angelina Jolie lives in the old Cecil B. DeMille mansion. 32, just an intimate little 32-room mansion. And Brad lives in some house up in the Hollywood Hills here in Los Feliz, but they might have bought a house before that. It's Renee. You're asking me to tell about Ellen Corby. I'll see what I can do, because it's 6:50. I've got to get off here in the next 3 to 5 minutes, because my dear friend Anastasia Pavlov starts her show at 7, and I never want to compete with her. And I always ask all of you to go over to her show on her channel, The Sacred Spears. It means so much to her, and she really appreciates you having you. But Ellen Corby was my neighbor. Just a love, and this was, of course, after, I've got to make this quick here, but I knew her long after the Waltons. It was when, she had her stroke, on the show. They had to write it into the series, but she never fully recovered. She always had a walker, one of those 3-prong walkers, and she was very limited in how she could talk, but she was very expressive, with her eyes and her mannerisms. And the other thing, if you guys don't know this, I'm not outing her. It's a known fact. She was gay, and I knew her and her partner, Stella. They were both just a lovely, lovely couple. And Stella was very good at interpreting Ellen for me. Like what Ellen wanted to say. And Stella, they just had like a ESP with each other. But I adored them. They lived in West Hollywood. I still somewhere have a photograph that Ellen autographed to me as Grandma Walton. And she didn't just sign the picture and bring it into me. She actually made a point of pulling the picture out of her envelope, putting her glasses on, grabbing a pen, and writing it to me in person. She was a classy, old school actress like that. She made a point of signing it directly in person to me to make it personal. It's just a lovely soul. And I know one of the things we talked about, yes, Andy, thank you. Time check, 6:50. It's now 6:52. I'm going to get off here in a minute. I have to. What was I going to say? Yeah, she and Joan Crawford were very, very, very close friends. They'd started back to the movie Harriet Craig, and Joan Crawford in that movie was very mean to her. She played the maid, and she broke a teacup, and Joan Crawford, I'm going to deduct the cost of that cup from your wages, and you are fired. Go upstairs and pack your bags and be gone in the morning. but they were very good friends in real life. And I know that Ellen was upset by the Mommy Dearest book and movie, and she was saying that was not the Joan I knew. That just wasn't her. She was a lovely person. Oh yeah, no, Ellen was, I think, she was married, but not to Stella, but that was long before it was legal for gay marriage. But they were very much a couple, very much. They loved each other dearly, and Stella was deeply devoted to Ellen. Ellen couldn't have had a better caretaker. And I'm looking here. I think we're reaching in the comments here. It's 6:53. So if you'll please pardon me, but I want to give my friend Anastasia her chance to shine. My very, very dear friend. So if you would please come over and join her. I know many of you do. And let's see, tomorrow I will be on the Oracle of Whimsy channel with my dear, dear friend, Dr. Whimsy Anderson. And we do a show together called Taco Tuesdays, where we talk about news events and we do readings for people. And we do this twice a week. We do it Tuesdays and Thursdays now. So you have 2 more chances to see me. But it's 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. And I thank you so kindly. Andy's asking, did I go to the house and yell out, Stella? No, I didn't do that. I didn't. But anyway, I'm going to sign out for now. I thank you with gratitude and appreciation for joining me. It means a lot to me too, very much. And I'll be back here next week. So same time, same place. Goodbye.